We come in peace. Come on, Drax. Seriously, dude?
Hello, friends. My name is Naz Perez, and I am sitting next to the coolest director and cast of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a film that has been 10 years in the making. You know, I remember when the first trailer came out, people were somewhat skeptical. No one knew walking into the theater for the first movie that we'd all be crying over a dead tree and like fall in love with a raccoon and a guy that listens to cassettes. Like, I feel like Gen Z knows what cassettes are because of Guardians. Yeah. And really, I think it's a testament to you, James. I mean, to me, you are the king of the island of misfit toys. And it is because of your virtuosity that we all see ourselves in the Guardians. And I feel like they're the emotional touchstone of the MCU. So I wanted to start off by asking you, what is the emotional undertone of this film? You know, if Volume 1 was about finding family and Volume 2 is about, you know, your chosen family over the one you're born into, what is Volume 3 about?
Well, I think that's true, but I really think of Volume 1 as being about the mother, Volume 2 is about the father, and Volume 3 is about the self. And coming to terms with each of those situations. In the first one, Peter Quill is coming to terms with his relationship with his mother, which is the person he loved the most in the world. In Volume 2, he's coming to terms with his relationship with his father. The one he thought he wanted wasn't the one he wanted, and the one he had was better than what he thought he was. And then in the third one, it's about getting to accept yourself. Who are we really, and how are we okay? You know, Mantis even says this at one time in the movie, most of them don't like themselves very much. They all have issues with themselves. Nebula has issues with herself. Peter Quill has issues with himself. Mantis, Kraglin, they all do. And Rocket most of all. So I think that that's what this movie is about, above and beyond anything else.
Wow, I love it, the self. And I've read that you've said that this film is like more serious or has like a heaviness to it. And I wondered how that translated to the heartbeat of all these movies, which is the music. You know, like what Adele song? No, I'm just kidding. Since Peter gets a Zune at the end of Guardians 2, you know, what type of music can we expect in this film? And is there a standout song that we should look out for?
Well, I think that, you know, the song that we used in the trailer that we did only for San Diego Comic-Con was Do You Realize by the Flaming Lips. And I think that sort of spacey, melancholy beauty and love is really what, you know, encapsulates a lot of the music. And so it was a big challenge coming into this movie because we were restricted, and restrictions sometimes help you in the first two movies, to songs that were from Meredith Quill's time. And in this movie, it's the songs off the Zune that Yondu gave to Peter Quill, and it's 300 songs, and they're from, you know, various different eras. And so it's about being able to find a commonality in songs, you know, that are as diverse as, you know, a Rainbow Song and Flaming Lips and Space Hog. So I think that the soundtrack might be, people seem to think it's the best soundtrack. I have a hard time seeing things like that objectively, but it works really well. And it's the most songs, it's 17 songs.
Can you tell us what eras?
Well, it's 70s, 80s, 90s, basically.
90s music?
Yeah, it's a lot of 90s music. It's predominantly 90s music.
And is there a standout song? It would be that Flaming Lips song.
I mean, I think the Flaming Lips song, there's a couple of others in there.
I mean, the opening song is pretty amazing, too. I'm not going to say what it is, but it just makes me cry each time.
The opening song is the core of it all,
Oh, we can't know what it is now.
Not yet.
Okay.
No, but it's amazing because also the songs are written in the script.
Yeah.
So that's pretty special. And also you gave us, you know, a mixtape that we could like listen to.
I do, yeah.
So I still listen to it now, or like when I drive and I listen to the song, I'm like, oh, it reminds me of like when we were shooting this and this. And it's like it's the emotional connection that you have with your movies, you know, it's like all the music, and yeah, it's amazing.
I love that you brought that up, because what's so fascinating and why we all love James Gunn is because a lot of the songs are chosen beforehand and they're done by the time the script is done, and you guys film to music. So I wanted to know from Chakudi, Pam, and Sean, what was it like filming to music, and was there a moment where you felt like the music really impacted your performance in this movie, or just made you feel like so cool?
Definitely for me. I mean, one of the first thing I read after James finally sent me the script, after he offered me the role, was the first time you see the High Evolutionary, and he's listening to, can I say that he's listening, what he's listening to? Is that safe? Am I allowed to? No.
His opera music?
Yeah. So he's listening to
This is so cool.
described as a space opera, right?
Yeah.
And for James, that's him, giving a hint to the character. For me, that was the core of my character in many ways, because I then went on, if you remember, we were in Vancouver, I went on and I just got a list of my favorite, quote unquote, opera or classical music that I felt defined this guy's life. And I would listen to it hours upon hours. And James actually ended up picking one of the things I sent him. So for me, that was the character. There was a grandiosity, but also there was a deep yearning to that piece that we chose. I don't want to tell you what it is. It's worth waiting for, because again, it's not a sound we associate with your movies, at all. That was like, oh, this is the guy, and out of it spurned so many ideas for me.
Wow.
And then there was another moment with the scene with Peter Quill when we first meet. Actually, it's in the trailer when I tell him, don't give me a second. That was just magic for me, because there are times when things that aren't logical, but are very visceral or ephemeral, make sense to you in a logical way.
Yeah.
And for me, those were the moments that was like, okay, I get where this guy's at right now,
Oh.
Yeah.
No, I remember also, like, of course, there's like sometimes like emotional songs, and sometimes there's like songs that give you power and that, make you feel empowered, or like, that it's gonna be a shot where when you walk, it's gonna be slow motion, and there's like a fucking cool music on top of it.
Yes!
Like, yes, let's go. It's like you're like walking like a rock star,
That's how I feel playing the Lizzie McGuire soundtrack when I'm driving. I'm like, I'm in my own 90s movie. But yes! And
Same soundtrack, same exactly.
Same thing.
I copied it completely.
This is what dreams are made of. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, we have all the songs beforehand, and it's nice to be able to listen to a song either before we shoot a scene or sometimes while we're shooting the scene, and know that it's almost like a filter on the scene a little bit, that you have some sense of what the tone of the scene is already as you go in. It's really, really helpful, and I think that if one stuck out more than any, it's the opening credits song again, which for every movie I feel that way. For all three movies, the opening credits song like injects something into the ride we're about to go on.
I love that you say that, because I feel like if I were to close my eyes and someone just said Guardians of the Galaxy, the image that pops up in my head is Star-Lord dancing to Come and Get Your Love. That to me is Guardians of the Galaxy. And I know, James, that you did a lot of different screen tests for Star-Lord before you found Chris.
Yeah.
And within a minute of Chris's
I
audition...
like to say settled for Chris.
He's not here, so that's okay.
It'd be more fun if he was.
And within a minute, you knew that he was Star-Lord. Do you remember that day and the day that you met
1000%.
Zoe? And how have they both been significant to you as a filmmaker in these movies?
They're my friends, and they're my, my partners. And Chris was, from the beginning, he's just so much a part of the heart of this film. His sort of good-natured, nice guyness, which permeates the set when he's on it and helps to affect everything. And I knew from the beginning that, I had written this character in the script. I wanted it to be somebody who stood outside of that character, if that makes any sense. I wanted somebody that could come in and be the lines, but really express, he's a main, it's not like Mantis. Like when Palm auditioned for Mantis, Mantis is like so specific in the script. Like she's such a unique and interesting character. Whereas Peter Quill's the leading man. It's like you want somebody that can bring character to a leading man, and it was very difficult. When Chris came in and he started auditioning for that role, literally, you say under a minute, it was probably 20 seconds. In which I'm like, oh, well, there's the guy. And this is after, like, no kidding, like probably 500 auditions of different actors. We just went so wide. Probably 30 people actually screen testing. I mean, most movies, maybe you have 2 people. Like for Mantis, we had like 5 people screen test. But it's not many people screen testing. A lot of people screen testing. And then Chris came in, and I just knew immediately that he was the guy, that he took this role into another place with where he was. And this is when he was pretty, much chubbier than he is. It wasn't the cut Chris Pratt that you know about. He was very chubby at that time. And
it's been remarkable to see his trajectory from the first movie to this one, because he's just full-on movie star now.
Yeah. I mean, he fills that role very well, like, you know, a few movie stars do, who are just such quality people. I think you guys can all agree, like,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
just the greatest
No,
guy.
he's so incredible to work with and so kind and so hilarious and just like always in a good mood. It's so easy to work with him. And what is hard is like to not laugh during the scene. So like you're gonna have to bite your tongue and like, oh no, I'm not gonna laugh.
Well, Palm, I'm glad that you say that because I feel like everyone is so excited to see the dynamic between Mantis and Peter Quill in this movie after having learned from the holiday special that they're brother and sister. I love that because she already had and shared that energy with Drax.
Yeah.
And can I just say, Palm, that no one can balance comedy and heart in the way you do. It truly
thank
is
you.
such a gift. And what I love about Mantis is that she can literally sense what people are feeling through just touching them. I mean, if you could bottle that up and sell it to like single people in LA, you'd make millions. Like it's the coolest superpower ever. So I wanted to ask you.
I don't want to know what single people in LA are feeling.
So Palm, I wanted to know, what is that like for you to step into personally? Because what I think is really cool is you actually get to touch your castmates. It's not a superpower that's done from a distance. And I think that that's really rare and special. So I wanted to know what that was like for you and how it relates to Drax and Peter in the third movie.
No, but like, first of all, it was really, I mean, it was kind of crazy to have to hold on to this secret for such a long time that we're like brother and sister, right? Because you told me when you cast me for the role, I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell anyone. It was like, oh my God, it's such a big secret. So now finally we can like openly talk about it. That's pretty amazing. And thank you for telling that I can like bring like comedy and like drama at the same time, but it's also the writing is so amazing too. It helps. No, but it's true that the bond that you have like between the characters now between Mantis and Peter is really strong, and I relate to that too because you know of like family stuff with my own brother, and it was like beautiful and cathartic to be able to play that on screen as well. You know.
All the amazing dynamics we're going to see in this movie, like between Gamora and Peter and between Mantis and Peter. I mean, sibling relationships to me are so sacred, which is why, Sean, it has truly been remarkable to see what you and your brother have built together. I mean, you guys have done so many movies together, and your work on this franchise in particular is my favorite, and that's coming from someone that almost dressed up as Weasel for Halloween. Like, it truly, and equally, it has been so beautiful to watch Kraglin grow from having a couple lines in the first movie to now being a full-on Guardian in this one. But I don't know if everyone watching knows that you pull double duty and that you're also the on-set Rocket. And since Volume 3 seems as though it's going to really revolve around Rocket, I wanted to know, how did that translate to your performance? And did you do any work for Baby Rocket?
Me.
I did.
These methods.
Yes, I did do some work as Baby Rocket, and you know, the whole experience of the way I think of it is that I'm a connector. There's a whole team of people that go into making Rocket, from James to Bradley Cooper to the VFX team to everybody, and I feel like my job is primarily to help connect the character to the other actors, to connect to James, to connect the story to Bradley when he's voicing the character, and to connect all the pieces to the VFX team as best I can. And I really look at Rocket as being more, even though I'm playing the character, I see a lot of James in Rocket, and I think of him as being sort of the essence of the soul of the Guardians in some way. It's been a heck of a ride playing the character. It's not something I ever would have thought that I would have done in my career, but it's really been an awesome experience and very, very joyful and moving. You know, it's been a moving process.
It is great. I mean, I got to say that Sean, it really needs to get more credit for his performance as Rocket, because now I'm really glad that Kraglin has become such a primary character, and it's really cool to see. And people, you getting noticed for that. But at the same time, like, and you'll see in this movie especially, there's a lot of scenes we shot in which it is all about Rocket's acting and those eye movements, everything that he does, it's all tracked off of Sean's performance. That is his performance, in the movie. And being able for people to know that and to see that is important. It is an amalgamation of Sean and Bradley and the visual effects artists really in creating a character. But I think it's unfair to undervalue Sean's performance, because we use it all throughout the whole movie in terms of what Rocket's acting is, and not just his voice.
And for me, it was invaluable, our interaction together. That the fact that I didn't have to just use a stuffed animal or whatever. It was very specific to acting to Sean, and there was a great day, without giving anything away, that one of the emotional peaks in the many peaks in this movie that involved his character and stuff, and we were trying to figure out the scene. We'd done a few takes, and then James said, come see the monitor from the day before Sean had done motion capture for it and all that. So I went back and I watched the scene and watched what he did, and right from what he did, I knew exactly how I had to go back and play the scene. You remember the scene we're talking about, because he put such emotional, right down to the sounds he was making, that I was like, oh, that's my way in. So that sort of help is invaluable.
Yeah, and Sean, it's such a unique talent, which is why I wanted to ask you about it. And you said it was moving, and I wonder if it's because your brother really sees himself in Rocket and is someone who grew up with a raccoon figurine collection. And you've always said that you felt so connected to Rocket and that you wanted to come back to finish his story. He is the secret protagonist. Why do you feel so connected to Rocket, and what are we going to find out about Rocket's origin story in Volume 3?
I think we'll find out who Rocket really is. I think we'll find out where he's from, how he came to be the way he is. And even saying that makes me incredibly sad.
Why?
Because it's a very sad story. And Rocket's backstory is very sad. And I think that he's a guy who was a little innocent animal that was taken out of his element and turned into something that he was never meant to be, and was damaged a lot by his experiences as a young kid. And as time has gone on, he's reacted to that by becoming a tough guy, by becoming the little snarly raccoon that we know from the beginning of Guardians 1, who is tough and mean and feisty and cruel even. And yet all of that is a protection against who he really is, which is a scared little raccoon baby, raccoon-like creature. And so I think that going through that journey, that's the reason that I wanted to finish this movie, is to tell that story. I thought it was important for people to hear it. It was important for people to see it, emotionally and spiritually, for the whole Guardians trilogy. It was always at the center of what was happening, and all of the different characters' arcs are incredibly important, but they're all linked together by Rocket's story. And I'm really excited for people to see that.
I love how much you love animals, and you chose to tell this story through an animal. I'm thinking of how that affects Groot, who's, we always kind of pair Rocket and Groot together. What version of Groot are we going to see in this movie? Because I'm picturing like a teenage Groot that listens to like Blink-182 and Fall Out Boy.
No, he's a little bit. He's a little bit more than that. We'll see that this Groot. So OG Groot, who died in Volume 1, gave birth to baby Groot, who grew up into like surly teen Groot, and is now who we call Swole Groot or young adult Groot, is very raring to go. He's just got that great college attitude of a guy who's ready to go. He's, the guy who's just in the end of college, that's ready to go out and conquer the world, believes in everything. But he also, unlike, original Groot, who was sort of unsocialized, he has a whole backstory in my head, which I've never even told, but like was much more of treated like an animal for much of his life. This Groot was treated as part of a family, and he has a bunch of fathers and mothers that have raised him. And in a lot of ways, Groot, Rocket is one of those fathers, but Peter Quill is also his father. And so those relationships are very important. But also, he's not stupid at all. He's a smart guy. He's the main pilot of the Bowie. He's a really He's very competent, you know.
He's a smart guy with a limited vocabulary. But I'd love to move on to someone who probably has an extensive vocabulary here in these chairs, and that's the high evolutionary. Chakudi, I am so excited you're here. You were just so brilliant. I mean, you went to Yale. Now you're playing a guy called the High Evolutionary. It's no Taserface, but it's a pretty dope name. You know, I've heard you describe him as a mad scientist and like Shakespearean characters like Richard III and King Lear, which you were fantastic in, by the way. How is he like those Shakespearean characters, and how is he also alike, or maybe not alike, to other Marvel villains like Thanos and Kang?
I think what makes this role, and I really couldn't have landed on or been asked to be part of a role that fits my background better in the sense of who this guy is, because there is a lot of Shakespeare in him. I think Richard III, certainly Lear's, certainly the latter part of the film, you'll see that descent to where we get to towards the latter part. And like I said to James, very much Henry IV. Henry IV, when in Henry IV, in the latter part of it, he can't sleep because he has the weight of England on his shoulders. And he has this beautiful speech in which he says, "How many thousands of my poorest subjects are at this moment asleep? O sleep, why hast thou forsaken me? How have I wronged you that thou no more will weigh my eyelids down?" Something like that. I'm paraphrasing.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
It's incredible.
And I said to James, I remember saying to him, I was like, oh yeah, he's Henry IV. And I feel that was a big part of the character for me, because I was like, if I take into this guy's character that he doesn't sleep because of his drive to create the perfect world, that's a great baseline to start off with the character. So there was that, and then of course Dr. Moreau, like mad scientist. I think of that movie Boys from Brazil, I think it was called, with, you know, those experiments. I was like, and on top of that, there's the Bond villain in it, the charm, the whatever. And on top of that, it's a Marvel movie, because at the end of the day, if you're doing a Marvel villain, there's certain prerequisites you have to have. You can't go all method on it, or you can't go all, you know, serious on it. You have to have that fact that it comes from the most important of pulp culture. So you have little things you have to do, like a grandness to it, a grandiosity, a fun with it, embrace it. So it was all those things in one, but it was really wonderful to have a character that had the space to do that. And one of the first things James said to me was like, I've written this character, I don't know if Marvel know exactly who this character is, I have it in my head and I need you to ground it. And that's the perfect remit any actor wants, in that there's something very carefully created, but it's still slightly ephemeral. It still needs to be brought down to earth, and that's where the acting instincts come by and you combine. And it was just a joy playing with him, because there were days I came in and I gave him exactly what I know he had in his mind. There were days when I didn't give him what he had in his mind and we would have to find it. And the days when I gave him something completely different from what he had in his mind, and the director he is was like, okay, let's explore that. And then I would go home bouncing like a kid going, I know there was a scene we had in our head, but what we found was whatever.
It's even cooler.
And you have to, ultimately, like Pom said, you have to have the material to do that with. Yeah. Ultimately, if that character wasn't there, I couldn't have had the fun I had with it.
You know, you speak of material. I remember in the 1972 Marvel premiere, The Power of Warlock, High Evolutionary does this like Buzz Lightyear to Star Command thing where he's like recording himself on electronic journals. So I was like wondering if he had a comedic aspect to him. But in that comic too, he also sort of recruits Adam Warlock, which people are so excited for. What relationship does he have with Adam in this movie, and what challenge does Adam pose to the Guardians?
Adam and High Evolutionary have a very tight relationship that's tighter than it is in the comics. High Evolutionary's relationship to the Sovereign, the race from which Adam was born, is a very tight relationship. Adam is beholden to High Evolutionary, and he is very eager to please him. And that's where we start the show, basically.
Well, I can tell you, I feel like fans are going to freak, because at the end of Volume 2, in that post-credit scene, when Aisha says Adam, everyone just like freaked out. So I'm so excited for that. And post-credit scenes are such a staple of the MCU and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But you, my friend, are now the new co-CEO of DC Studios. And I feel like sometimes there's this rivalry between Marvel and DC fandoms, but when you look at creatives like yourself and Kevin Feige, you can actually see that there's a lot of love there between both universes. So because there's crossover between DC and Marvel in the comics, do you see a day where we see these two universes collide on the big screen?
I think there's always the possibility of that. You know, I think that would be a fun thing for fans to see. But I do think that it's really about just grounding the Marvel and DC universes right now and trying to make them each as strong as possible. I think that the crossover that I like is that Kevin and I are very close friends, so we talk all the time. I think that the idea of a rivalry between Marvel and DC, of course, there's always going to be some rivalry, but what's really important to me is that we embolden the movie-going experience. And the theater-going experience is something that survives on big spectacle movies today. So if we are going to really allow it to thrive, that means we want good movies to be made. And that's going to happen with Marvel movies and DC. And contrary to popular belief, $1 for Marvel is not $1 less for DC. Quite the opposite. If you make good Marvel movies, it brings people to theaters. They go see more good DC movies. You make good DC movies, it brings them to the theater. People go see good Marvel movies. So it's about keeping that tradition alive. And in that way, there is a crossover, and there is already, we work together with Warner Brothers, DC, Disney, all the different studios to, try to keep that being something that people are able to enjoy.
Well, thank you so much for this lovely spectacle of Volume 3 and really this trilogy in general. I know that so much of these movies have been made with the same people in front of the screen, behind the screen. Judiana Makovsky, who's done costume, right. Lars P., who's been first AD to now co-producer. It really is so beautiful, like the art that you guys have put into this for us in the last decade. So I just wanted to thank you. And thank you guys all so much for watching. Tickets to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 are on sale right now on Fandango.com.
Go buy them.